I think we had a ship that got stuck in the ice on an expedition that should win, if you will. And I reckon it's 34.788. And I have my own opinions on that, which aren't normally the opinions of someone who plays in the band or in the same band. I thought maybe I didn't have this confident naivety thing back then. I didn't think of it. I mean, I was in with it back then. I've since sort of discovered that I think that's what we were doing. But looking back, I think potentially we overstepped our bounds trying 34. And I made my sort of thoughts on that album and title and cover and the way we recorded it well known. Everybody knew that I disagreed with the way we were going, but I was outvoted and I towed the line, I suppose.
Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 218 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest this week, as advertised, Andrew Craighan, the founding guitarist and a member of My Dying Bride. He was on the podcast to talk about their upcoming album, A Mortal Binding. We spoke in depth about the history of the band, including the highs and the lows, which include, of course, the very controversial 34.788% complete. A really fascinating conversation. If you're a fan of My Dying Bride, you absolutely do not want to miss this one, but Andrew is just generally an awesome dude, and I think this is going to be one of hopefully several appearances that he makes on the podcast. That is going to be coming your way very shortly, but first we need to talk about Lunatic Affliction. And by saying Lunatic Affliction, I'm not referring to the Scottish government. I'm referring to a black metal band out of Germany. They have just put out a brand new record called Nota Brixtia. It is released independently, and that is why we celebrate it at the very top of the show. This is a track called The Fire That Engulfs Us All. That was a track called The Fire That Engulfs Us All. The band is Lunatic Affliction, and the album from whence it came is Noto Brixtia, released on Bandcamp on March the 3rd of this year. Head over there, buy yourself some music, and if you do, let Lunatic Affliction know who sent you. Great stuff there, celebrating independence on Into the Necrosphere. As always, if you are an unsigned band and you want to get your music heard, then drop me a line on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. If I like what I hear, you will hear it on the podcast. Also, make sure, if you've not already done so, that you elbow drop the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on the socials. Head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and avail yourself of some of the fine merchandise on offer there. And then, of course, make sure that you are following all of my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday. Every Wednesday, Sensei Mike Hill brings you another episode of Everything Went Black. He returns every Thursday with my favorite podcast of the week, Necromaniacs, alongside co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. They review new and old horror movies. Professor Jeff Kashid has not yet been a guest on the podcast, but Mike Hill and Mike Scondado are no strangers to the show. Like I said, an absolute must listen, in my opinion, and always a great way to get you set up for something to watch over the weekend. Also on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, the sinister minister Carl Haikara brings you a deep dive into the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knox. And then our friend and brother Cheyenne of the band Trivax brings you his podcast Iblis Manifestations When You Least expect it. When I'm done talking to Andrew, don't go anywhere, because I'm going to be putting some new releases on your radar and talking about albums by Civerous, Brodequin, Khold, as well as Conspiracy X. And then, of course, it is on to the weekly news rant, where I will round up for judgment new singles by Leaves Eyes, Whoredom Rife, Venomous Echoes, Veil of Pnath, Necrot, Verberis, Selbst, and much, much more. That will be coming your way in about an hour and a half's time. But first, we welcome to the podcast for the first time, hopefully not the last time, Andrew Craighan of My Dying Bride. The second that I heard Thornwick Hymn for the first time, it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, holy shit, this to me, like, I've been a fan of this band for many, many years. It felt like the natural successor to Feel the Misery, but with like a little bit of one of my other favorite My Dying Bride records thrown in, which is and Songs of Darkness, Words of Light. Yeah. It kind of had a bit of the spice of that record. And then just that overwhelming wall of sound doom of Feel the Misery. But it was such an incredible song. And I've now since had the record for about 2-3 days that Nuclear Blast has sent me. And it is outstanding. So firstly, congratulations. Yeah, I think is the best way to start the conversation.
Well, that settled me right down then. This can go south from here. It's fine.
Let's kind of just level set a little bit, because the Ghost of Orion, when I had Aaron on the podcast, he went into quite a bit of detail about that being a particularly difficult record for the band to record. Yes. And there were obviously reasons for that, principal to those being his daughter falling ill and what he had to go through as a parent for that. But how did you feel about that album? As the years have ticked on, I know you guys have played some of the songs live. How have you felt about that album? Does it still sit with you as something that was tough to do?
I still remember it was tough to do, but I look back at the album as a musical entity, if you will, because I look at the cover, the title, the songs as a success. It was difficult. No, there's no question about that. I mean, we all know Aaron's. Thankfully, she's fine now. Well, it's fine as she's going to be. Considering. We all know that he went through that. We can't pretend that we lived that. We were there on the sidelines, but we can't pretend that we lived the same pain.
No.
But the album was difficult. There's no denying that. But I think in many respects, he allowed this album to be what it is, because all of the horror that was, quite literally poured into that album in many respects, because no one was having any fun doing that one, allowed this one. I'm not going to suggest that these songs are fun, but there's a difference. There's a positivity in this album I think we didn't have during A Ghost of Orion. And it works for My Dying Bride, but it wouldn't work for many other bands. But overall, I do remember it just being tough, and it was a credit to the band's tenacity or stupidity, whichever way you want to look at it, that we carried on through that, because we were close on many occasions to thinking it shouldn't. This is not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be all right. It's doom metal, and My Dying Bride has a history, I suppose, or an image, if you will, that we're supposed to be not necessarily miserable ourselves, but that's the kind of thing that we're known for. But we're not supposed to be living it. That wasn't part of the deal. Apparently, well, as far as I was concerned, this was supposed to be great fun, and it wasn't. It was tough, and it was worse than tough. Anyway, we managed to get through it. People came in and helped. Particularly with Jeff on drums, came in and saved the day when all the sort of drumming options seemed to have dried up. And he played a masterclass and made the songs. He developed them in ways that we wouldn't have normally taken them, to great success, I thought. But it was hard, but I look back now and think it's because I don't have to relive the pain. I just listen to the songs, and I look at the cover, and I look at the titles, and I think it's a winner, it's a success, and it's weird. Just the Ghost of Orion song itself, and then the Solace, and some of the other sort of orchestrated passages. Considering the pressure we were under from various quarters, I think, without blowing my own trumpet too much, I think we did all right.
It's definitely a record where musically I think it's top drawer. It's right up there with some of the best things that you guys have done. As you say, there's the orchestration, there's a real polish to the album as well, which when I had originally listened to it, I remember thinking, okay, is this Nuclear Blast having put some more resource into this band that maybe they didn't have access to previously? But what does stand out to you straight away is something that Aaron highlighted when he was on the podcast, which is that he felt that he could never quite find the sort of emotional passage that he needs to be able to perform vocals to his standard, like to his expectation, and which is why you guys ended up, at least according to him, with a double tracking of the vocals, and all the different stuff. Was that apparent from the get-go that was going to be a problem? From your perspective, how did that play out?
It wasn't apparent to me from the beginning that he was going to be so far behind, if you will. And I'll qualify that, because it sounds like a dig in many respects, but it's not. While he was going through his problems with his daughter and the cancer rehabilitation and recovery, he just stepped out of the band, as you can well imagine, and he doesn't come to many rehearsals anyway, but he certainly came to none during that. But normally when the songs start to form up and look like song shapes and that kind of thing, he would then come in and start working on vocals, but none of that took place. So we were really flying on sort of autopilot, as in we know roughly where things are going to go. I know what's going on, so we can build these songs without vocalists, if truth be known. Which we did on the new album, but that's we'll come to that, I suppose. So, but what we sort of quickly realized, if you will, when we got to the studio, we had maybe 10 songs or whatever it was at the time that were all 2 guitars, sometimes 3 guitars, all recorded, bass, violin, keyboards, drums. Then we had cello, and in places we had female vocals. And Aaron hadn't really met any of this. He came into this wall of very polished. These were demo tracks as well at the time. Very polished, very finished music, and he just quite literally just jumped in at the deep end, and he didn't quite swim as fast as he might have liked. By his own admission as well. And I'm not entirely sure how. I can't obviously answer these questions for him, but there was definitely times when I was talking to Nuclear Blast and saying they were brilliant, actually. They never put any time scales or pressure on us to finish that record. But I was talking to them saying, look, we might need more time with the vocals. Aaron needs more time to recover, if you will, to find his feet again and to find his sense of self within the vocal side, because he was, by his own admission, in the studio, he was amazed at what we'd been doing while he was out, busy just ensuring that his family was as good as it could be, and then came back and probably the shock of his daughter recovering and the shock of it being finished and the shock of the album and the shock of being in the studio. Imagine, if you will, that's probably a lot to take on. And in many respects, I thought it might be worth delaying, and then we continued, and we because we all wanted to continue, really. But the multi-layers, in places I thought they worked. In some other places, we peeled them right back, and they found, if you will, Aaron's performance, the one particularly on a couple of songs where, while peeling these back, we actually found the best performance, and we didn't need the multi-layering anyway. So it was an interesting sort of approach to vocals, which we not necessarily won't do again, but we won't quite do it that way again.
Well, you do it at the tail end of Thornwick Hymn, and actually there I think it works extremely well. It's a really nice way to add texture to the end of that track.
Well, for that one though, it's more of a, rather than being the actual vocal performance, the main meat of the song. I think in essence this time it works, and I do agree it does work. But it's more of an outro that feel, in my sort of opinion anyway. So whereas before we wouldn't necessarily we wouldn't overthink that now, but right there at the end of that song, it finishes the song very nicely for me.
Yeah. What was the catalyst to start trying the double, the multi-tracking of the vocals? Was there any one thing that led to it? And I was always curious to know where that came from. Was that a production decision? Was it a decision from the band to do it? Aaron's decision? Where did that come from?
I think it's a production decision. It certainly wasn't my idea. I would have, if you stand next to me long enough, I'll be asking you to talk in a death metal style soon. Death metal style. That's for me. Yeah. If you're struggling for a vocal style, just do death metal. Or if you're struggling for a note, you can't reach the note, just do death metal. You can bark all the way across it; it will fucking well work, no problems. So, but I wasn't. Partially because the band didn't go to the vocal sessions on Ghost. One reason alone, we didn't want to add pressure, because we understood it is the condition that he's just come back from is probably feeling fragile as it is. He's certainly overwhelmed by the sense of the music. We've actually met that. We've spoke about that. He said this, so we thought, well, we'll stay out of it. But he has to go stand there with Mark Miner, who does our recording and engineering and producing now. And maybe Mark thought this might take some of the weight off by layering them. Because obviously, with the layers, I'm not saying that you can have some mistakes, because you can't. But there's an element of forgiveness with 2 or 3 vocal lines that you wouldn't get with one, in many respects. But I'm not sure if that came from Aaron. If I had to bet, I would say Mark. Mark's into these types of things, and I would have thought it would be more Mark than Aaron, but I might be wrong.
My takeaway always from that, and when I spoke to him, it was something I thought about when I reflected on the conversation we'd had as well, is he has always been such an expressive vocalist when it comes to his clean vocals. I think when you're so emotionally exhausted, it's very, very hard to put yourself back in that mindset to be able to deliver that degree of expression, especially because you are tapping into some relatively negative energies. Ironically, the first emotion or the first sentiment I think that I took away from Thornwick Hymn, and it's apparent across the rest of the record too, is there's a real sense of victory on this album, like in the same way as the last Primordial record kind of had this sadness and the solemnness to it, but it had this real like fist in the air, like victory over adversity. That's absolutely what I took away from Thornwick Hymn, and as I said to you, subsequently the other songs as well.
If there's that could be true, but that wouldn't be something we have consciously thought of or said out loud, or if any, and I'm at all the rehearsals and we normally discuss how we're going to shape things and how we want for these things to progress. we didn't think that. But I can understand why. I don't know about the primordial one, but I can certainly understand why you might feel that with this. And it makes more sense when you actually know what we came through from Ghost to get to this to get to this record. So yeah, maybe there's a sense of relief. I can say that, because we have a fully formed band with two guitarists as opposed to me just writing everything and all the harmonies. And we had a full-time, obviously with Dan being back on a more permanent basis. It allows a more solid and more precise and concise rehearsal. I don't really want to say this, but I can't. But say there's a sense of joy in these for me because it was great.
There you go. There's the headline. My Dying Bride turns to joy for their new music.
But I mean, regardless of the subject matter, regardless of the fact that we love slow and heavy, you know what I mean. That in these songs, and this is for all of us, because when we're playing them, you can see people, the band, are really enjoying the power that we've created. Particularly, Her Dominion opens up, pulls no punches. The Apocalyptist, we found, even though it's kind of a lengthy version, sort of harking back to some of our earlier stuff, people love it. Loved playing it too. So we're in. Maybe you can sense that we're happy, if that's not an oxymoron.
Well, you know something, as we're talking about it, maybe victory is not the right word. You guys you're in your element. I noticed that when I saw you open for Paradise Lost at the Shepherd's Bush Empire as well, which incidentally was the first show that I ever took my daughter to. I will confess, she's 9 now, so I'm not sure she quite knew what to make of My Dying Bride. She was very interested. But she was having a bit of a boogie when Paradise Lost were about three songs in. With you guys, she said she liked it, but you could see it was like there's a lot for her to wrap her head around here. But what I noticed on stage was definitely, there's like when a band, when any human being generally in life is, when they're in their element, there's this energy you get off them. They standing up straight, their chests are out, their shoulders are back. There's a confidence to them, and I absolutely picked that up from every single person on stage when I saw you guys play.
And I think you're right. Because we were well rehearsed, and without, it's there might be Paradise Lost fans that don't like My Dying Bride, but for us, playing to Paradise Lost crowd is easy. It's our crowd in many respects. Obviously there's more of them than they might come to a single My Dying Bride concert, but it's pretty easy to get into it and be confident that you're playing to the right people. Now, not all of them, like your daughter, might grasp it and think, and there were some other people that are just pure Paradise Lost fans and don't like us at all, but they get what we're trying to do. So there's no, there's no sort of there's no negativity in the room. So you are, well, I certainly was. I felt perfectly at home. As far as I was concerned, everybody else out there was just like me. And there for the same reasons. I was there because if I wasn't in My Dying Bride, I'd be going to see that gig.
Yeah.
And I was there to play the nostalgic songs for our fans, or maybe the PL fans that want to hear some old stuff. None of the new stuff came out. PL were there, obviously celebrating 30 years of Icon. Beautiful. I just thought, for me, it was natural, and maybe you actually saw us relaxed for a change. You don't often see that on stage, not from us anyway, because we're not overly keen at playing. Once we're on stage, we're kind of there, but it just felt it was just home from home, and the Brodequin one too.
Was there? You guys came up with Paradise Lost, right? Roughly from a similar part of the world. Was there ever I had read rumors, let me put it this way. I'd read rumors of, at least a competitiveness between the bands. Was there truth to that rumor? Not
really. We were all, and still are, quite some way behind them in popularity and record sales and to be fair, in work ethic. They do it full time, and we're only semi-professional. I'm back at normal work tomorrow. But what we did do is I won't call it professional competition because we were kids, but we decided that early on we were called Paradise Lost clones when we first came out, mainly because we were more or less from the same area, give or take, and we obviously signed to Peaceful, which was a clear indicator that we were of the same ilk. We played not dissimilar music, but the same music in a different way, if you will. And we were immediately called clones, and we didn't like that very much, as you can probably imagine. So we never listened to the Paradise Lost. And then when Anathema came through, we also never listened to them, because we were each of the band was being, maybe not Paradise Lost, but certainly we were hearing that we were being called clones of these others. So we thought, well, the best way to do that is just we never listened to them. We used to gig with them where we could, because they were always pulling good crowds, and like I said, we would gladly support them, which we did on a number of occasions, always to great success for both of us, both bands. But we never, there was no open competition, mainly because they were so far in front. It was a done deal. They'd won that race and continue to win it as well. And we were just happy to, I don't know, not necessarily, ride on their wave. It was their wave, and we were miles behind. But they opened doors in Europe, particularly when it comes to sort of playing live, that we didn't have to even push. Paradise Lost had already been, and they were quite happy to take a My Dying Bride this week. So they made it very easy for some of the British bands, us included. So there was never any animosity. They're just a great bunch of guys. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean an incredible band. They definitely led me to discovering My Dying Bride. I remember discovering My Dying Bride around about the time when Like Gods of the Sun came out, and it was thanks to MTV Headbangers Ball, where they were interviewing. I think you were there. You and Aaron were being interviewed, and it was playing a show with the Blood Divine, and I can't remember who else. I remember the Blood Divine I thought Blood Divine was okay, but I remember hearing the music on Like Gods of the Sun. Like, I think it was Grace and Yearing that they showed a clip of you guys play, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is incredible. Like, this is absolutely my wheelhouse of the Paradise Lost-ish kind of stuff that I liked, but there was like an additional emotional weight to what you guys were doing here. But interesting what you say about the concerted effort to get away from those Paradise Lost comparisons, because is that why Turn Loose the Swans took such a sharp turn away from, I guess, anything that you could relate necessarily to them?
No, I don't think so. Turn Loose the Swans wasn't deliberately moved in any direction. That's just how we sounded like. The key moment on Turn Loose the Swans was when we were in the studio, and I can still see it now. And there used to be a bench behind where everybody would sit, and the studio mix control desk was there, and obviously Mags, who used to do all our recording back then, and Aaron was stood up. And which song was it? It may have been The Crown of Sympathy, the opening line, "See the light and feel my warm desire." Mags was going, "Why not just sing that? Just sing it before the music comes in. Just sing that. See the light and feel my warm desire." And off Aaron goes, and then suddenly we're going. Mags is saying, "In Turn Loose, how about just singing this bit?" And suddenly we're adding clean vocals where we didn't think about that. This appeared in the studio as and when, and we were taking out, sort of a contra to what my beliefs should be, taking out death metal and replacing it was clean, but it was working, and we were like, "Fucking hell." We never thought we'd come to this, and certainly not so soon. But the music itself was just written in what you would consider normal My Dying Bride way. We didn't really know what Paradise Lost were doing because we didn't listen to it. So there was no way we could avoid it, because no one was paying attention, deliberately paying attention to it anyway. But I think the standout moment may have been the suggestion to try clean, and it then suddenly working as well, which to everybody's surprise, we never really expected that. And the rest is history and all that. That's the same.
Was Aaron really as subconscious as he said that he was when he was on when he started doing those clean vocals? He mentioned to me that he pulled his T-shirt over his head when he was doing the clean vocals for the first time and turned his back to the band.
That's likely, yeah, because we were merciless in our in our appraisals back then, and as you can imagine, we would. But it was all done in great fun. But I can imagine the self-conscious bit being quite something, because obviously he used to hide behind the growls, and by his own admission, he claims not to be a real vocalist singer. In essence, it's a style that he has where it's clean vocals, but it's not singing as such, which it is. But I mean, he says it's not. But that first attempt, and remember, no practicing. We were doing it in the studio. Some of the recordings you get are 2 and 3 takes old. So it wasn't as if we were like now, where the songs are put together and the vocal lines are even potentially played on guitar or piano before he. So these are some note choices that you can that we know work and will fit with the harmony. Blah blah blah. None of that. This was all live, but recorded on tape there and then. So you can sense, or maybe that's why it was so special. We didn't know what was about to happen, and we certainly didn't know about the reaction, which was more positive than negative, and even more positive now as it's clearly well bedded in.
I think a lot of people that weren't around, or at least weren't into this music at that time, I don't think they realized just what a big deal it was to do clean vocals at that time. I mean, there was if you were moving around in the death metal scene or in the underground, the idea of clean vocals was just completely and utterly anathema. I mean, not to steal the word, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it was just not done. So, for somebody to do it's interesting that you mentioned "Crown of Sympathy" was the first song that he did it on, because that's it popped into my head. Like, I wonder if it was that one. It's my standout track off "Turn Loose the Swans" for sure. But it would have been a gutsy move, I think it's fair to say, for any band to do that. Like, did you guys have nervousness before you put out "Turn Loose the Swans" that, like, fuck, we don't know how people are going to respond to this?
No, I use this. I have this term that as I've looked back at our past, if you will, and I've tried to work out how we came up with these things and how we thought we were going to get away with it. And it's all basically down to confident naivety is how I've kind of quantified it, if you will. And we were so ballsy, so naive. We thought the sun shone out of our ass, and we were quite happy that it was. You know what I mean? We were so stupid and I don't know, unworldly wise that we thought it doesn't really matter. But it did matter. But what I mean is that we were confident we were right, even though we had nothing to base that on. Really nothing. But on the back of that, we had a very, going back to Peaceful and Hammy, a very open record label that said yes to almost. In fact, I don't remember them saying no to anything we did. So we knew we could experiment within, and we weren't daft enough to try and break it, but we were pushing the edges a little bit. And we had and I remember this distinctly, we had a very punk rock attitude towards our own scene. Not disdain or anything like that, but we decided that if that rule thinks it's there, we're going to say that it's not there for us. So we were almost rebelling within our own scene, which could have been disastrous. I mean, it could have been. And it turns out it wasn't. It just turns out that we did those things by sheer fluke, if you will, bang on time. But it was, I put it all down to confident naivety. We really, no one can know, and I defy anybody to go back in time and look at some of their classic records that became stellar sort of standout songs, that they knew exactly when they were doing it, that it would be. Maybe shortly afterwards, they might have got an inkling that they've stumbled on something, but not at the time. We had no idea with Turn Loose where that would end up. We thought we were just being contra to the scene, and it would stand out. I mean, this is basically why on The Angel on the Dark River, The Cry of Mankind is the opening song, because when everybody said you can't use that, and we're going, well, actually, that's going first then, and it's that kind of sort of. I won't say fuck you attitude, because they're not really fuck you attitude songs, but it was that kind of thinking that, oh well, if people, we'll stir the pot with this one, and they worked, and we were like, oh man, which was cool because we were never really expecting it. I mean, who would have thought when we were just to jump albums temporarily, when we were putting together The Cry of Mankind, no one in this band or in the studio at the time knew where that song would end up. As a sort of linchpin of all his gigs for the next 30 years or whatever it was. It was just a strange song that we thought, well, in fact, the song's actually a journey in two halves, but well, in our mind, it was just a song. It's
kind of become like your, like Slayer used to have Angel of Death on every single show. Metallica has Seek and Destroy on every single show. It's kind of like your calling card, that track.
Yes, and certainly we could never have predicted that when we put the song together. Because when we actually got to the studio, all we had was the sort of intricate harmony line that sews the whole song together, which Calvin came up with. The rest of the guitar, which I do, was built in the studio, piece by piece.
Now, let me ask you a question. That confident naivety, was there ever a point for you personally or for the band where that got challenged, or where that ran into the brick wall of reality? Because I just wanted, let me just put context in around. It's like with everything that any man endeavors to do, right? At some point, you're going to have a humbling experience, or at least something that makes you go, "Not sure that was the move to make." So that I'm just curious in your own journey, kind of when or whether that was ever challenged.
I think we had a ship that got stuck in the ice on an expedition that should win, if you will. And I reckon it's 34.788. And I have my own opinions on that, which aren't normally the opinions of someone who plays in the band or in the same band. I thought maybe I didn't have this confident naivety thing back then. I didn't think of it. I mean, I was in with it back then. I've since sort of discovered that I think that's what we were doing. But looking back, I think potentially we overstepped our bounds trying 34. And I made my sort of thoughts on that album and title and cover and the way we recorded it well known. Everybody knew that I disagreed with the way we were going, but I was outvoted and I towed the line, I suppose. And I think that we hit the buffer on that. You know, the expedition the ship got stuck in the ice and we were in big trouble. And then immediately after that, we recovered, if you will, and we had a small meeting. And I said, look, if this band's continuing, we're going back to what this band, I think, should be. And we did the light at the end of the world.
Yeah.
And everybody, well, I say everybody, the My Dying Bride fans were going by the response and the sales and the recognition and those kind of things. We're very happy to see the band back where they thought it should be. And I wouldn't want to move into sort of strange waters again in that kind of way. I tried to talk us out of it the first time around when it didn't work, but I wouldn't do it again. And I like this stuff, you know. And I mean, and what bothered me the most about the 34 is, if you would have been in the rehearsal room when we wrote that album, you would have heard My Dying Bride, standard My Dying Bride, for good or bad, but standard doom metal My Dying Bride. Recording and the album, the titles and the cover, and particularly some of the song titles, and the way it was then dressed and recorded in a particular sort of rock manner rather than a doom metal manner. I mean, looking back, fair enough. But that was our wake up call, if you ask me.
That was your brick wall moment. For me, I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure because I don't really believe in guilty pleasures. I'm a grown man. I can take responsibility for what I like and what I don't like. But when that record came out, I remember being confused by it at first. But there were always certain tracks that I was quite drawn to. I really liked and still do Uber Lebender. I thought was excellent. And actually Heroin Chic, which was the song that I recall at the time getting the most shit, I really liked. It was like that was to me the standout on the record. And I mean, I had come from Like Gods of the Sun, then I got Angel in the Dark River, Turn Loose the Swans, and I was very, very into that. So I was expecting something in that vein, but there was just something about Heroin Chic that I thought was like, there's just something about this that I quite dig. I don't know what it is. Like, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something that just vibes with me with a song.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness to it, going back now, 20, fuck knows how many years after it's come out, I look back at that record with fond memories, and I can, in fact, I do listen to it periodically just because, why not? And I don't dislike it. I still don't think, I mean, it stands out in a sort of back catalogue as an anomalous sort of a little blip, if you will. But I think it's necessary. I mean, it was necessary. We had to go through that, or else we may have lost ourselves completely. I kind of know what you mean about Heroin Chic, particularly because that song's dark. I mean, the subject matter is not fun. And as for a few of the other, which has come as no surprise, as My Dying Bride songs. So, but I immediately hear the riffs and I'm hearing, but if we didn't do it quite like that, we've got just a fucking doom metal. Because I remember writing the songs and I was there, and we wrote them exactly like we did. And anyway, so So I look back fondly, but I wasn't enamored at the time.
Yeah. Did it get particularly heated when you guys had those conversations? You mentioned being outvoted. Was there a bit of a Mexican standoff there at one point?
I honestly don't remember that. But you would have thought.
I was going to say, because you're a big dude, like you're more intimidating than you're more physically intimidating than most of the other men in the band. I would have thought that they would have at least fallen in line when you said, "Look, I'm
not actually a big dude. I'm fairly. I mean, I'm not a big dude like Aaron's 6 foot something. I'm only 5 foot. I think maybe 5'7". In my high heels. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not tall or massive.
Why do I think of you as being that so much bigger?
Because the stages we play on are 15 foot.
Probably.
Yeah, no. I'm quite average in every respect.
I take back my compliment in that case.
I was Pete Steele.
Yeah.
So, God rest his soul. But no, I genuinely don't remember a fallout or even particularly harsh words. It was a strange time for the band, and I think it was one of those moments where, if this is how it has to survive, just to survive, then so be it. And I don't remember sort of conceding or being upset particularly. I just thought, we're making a fucking mistake here. Why can't they see it? And because it's one of those moments where we go, well, it must be me because everybody else is on board with this. So you kind of not necessarily toe the line, but you sort of go quiet and think, let's see what happens. But it didn't work. People left almost immediately afterwards, and I thought, well, couldn't you have left before?
Yeah. Couldn't you have spared us the drama and just fucked off before we went to the studio?
So it was one of those things. I mean, like I said, but there was no. I don't remember falling out, and you remember those. If it had been harsh and horrible, we'd have remembered that, but we didn't. But we did. We had a meeting in a pub in Dewsbury. It was me, Adrian Jackson, the bass player back then, and Aaron, and we just decided, right, let's go back to what I was sort of championing the death doom, the darkness. You know what I mean? The sort of misty version of, lots of reverb, lots of delays, that go back, not necessarily go back to Turn Loose and As the Flower Withers, but just become what the other everything in front of 34 was. And we did the light, people loved it, off we go. And I was happy again, so that was something.
Well, by that measure, how do you feel about Like Gods of the Sun? Because that's arguably your most accessible record. It would at least in my mind would have been the closest that you would have come in terms of accessibility to something like Icon or Draconian Times.
Yeah, it's actually second still, I think, to Angel in the Dark River, believe it or not. And the reason, and I know exactly why it sounds like it does, is because we've just done 2 massive tours, one with Iron Maiden and one with Dio in America. And the Iron Maiden one was just shy of 2 months, and the Dio one, I think, was around 5 or 6 weeks. And we were watching how they do things. And we realized that some of our songs weren't coming across to these crowds live. And I think maybe subconsciously or consciously, the album reflects that experience of, we need some songs that we can play live to crowds that aren't ours potentially. Because when if we were to go play in Delft now in Holland to a My Dying Bride crowd singularly as a headliner, we'd pull out some songs that would never make it on a festival if we were playing Grasspop or Hellfest. We just wouldn't do those songs. But our crowd, in our venue with with our setting, we'll bring the odd ones back. And we were, I think, deliberately, and I mean deliberately, trying to dress the song so we had something that would be punchy enough for live to balance out some of our songs are unplayable live if you think about it. And how we got away with it was staggering. But that was I think in many respects maybe a not necessarily conscious sort of shock back to more listenable songs, but I think it had something to do with it because it was right after those 2, or particularly the Iron Maiden one.
I was interested when you said you guys had played with Dio, because I'm just Iron Maiden, I'm not so fussed about it, but Dio I'm a fucking massive fan of, and I think after I saw the Dio documentary, possibly even more so. What was just tell me some memories of that tour. What was it like playing with him? I assume you had the opportunity to meet him.
Oh yeah, he loved our accents. He's a big fan of the English, and we were obviously very English. And he was a big fan of jokingly coming in and calling us cunts, because he was trying to practice it in the way we would say it.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, the word consummate professional doesn't really sum him up from our experience. It's more than that. And consummate gentleman doesn't really sum him up. It's more than that. We just had nothing but admiration. And he is such a great guy. And he would, if we needed something, he said, come see me. If you're having any troubles, come see me. He really looked after us. He was a star. He really was. I mean, in every respect, you know what I mean? He really was. And then to watch him on stage each evening captivate and mesmerize the crowd, us included, you can't buy that. You know, it was amazing. And to be fair to him and all his band and all his crew, they were all brilliant to us. But I met him some years after. He did it was like a gig where he just played Holy Diver and maybe had some songs off Heaven and Hell and those kind of things. It was like a 2-album set, maybe Lasting Line. It was definitely Holy Diver, but I don't remember the second one. And me and a friend of mine, we knew the merch guy, because the merch guy, that we saw them in Manchester in England, and the merch guy for Dio was our tour manager. And I said, fucking hell, that's Bo. So we were talking to him, and he says, oh, you've got to come backstage. You've got to come backstage and meet Ronnie. And I said, no, I don't want to hassle him. You know, I know what it's like after a gig. You don't want to see random people that you won't remember. He says, he'll remember you. He loves you. He'll remember you. So my mate, who was also called Andy, was a fucking massive Dio fan. I mean, massive. And to the point where it's religious, you know, it's that kind of thing. And I said to Andy, I said, look, when we go backstage and meet Dio, don't do anything fucking stupid. He's really a nice guy. Just stand there and nod, and if he offers to shake you out, shake it. It was almost like preparing him to meet royalty. Yeah, this is how you meet royalty. Don't fuck about. Don't do anything stupid. So, and Andy, he's like, yeah, no worries. Then I'll play the game. Just, we've got to go back. We've got to go back. And go, fucking hell, all right. So Bo, the merch guy, takes us backstage, and Dio's there, and he goes, oh my god, and Wendy's there, and some of the other guys, his ex-wife, even though she did tour managing and so on. And he comes over and he shakes my hand, and I looks round. Where the fucking hell's Andy? He's on his knees. He's praying in front of him.
Like Wayne's World in front of Alice Cooper.
See, that's the fucking thing I'm talking about. You know, and I yanked him up, and Dio yanks him up. It's like, oh my god, he was fucking brilliant. But that's the impression, and that's the sort of magnitude of the guy. Even though, I won't do anything stupid, but as soon as I see him, I start praying. Why not?
That voice, though, man. You go back and listen to Children of the Sea, and I mean, even for me, my favorite unpopular take, my favorite Black Sabbath album by far is Dehumanizer. And I think that his vocal performance on that record is fucking astonishing. Like, if you listen to it's like the song's called Too Late, even some of the heavier songs on there, but Too Late in particular, it's just it's almost virtually peerless. He's just unbelievable.
Well, I would say peerless is regardless of any standout performance. You listen to almost anybody now. There's nothing or no one doing what he did. And no one new coming through doing what he did that I can see. And his range and his note choice, it's just inspired. And going back to say, like, maybe on bits of Lasting Line and bits of Holy Diver, he would add in the essence of a growl, not a full growl, you know what I mean, not death metal or anything like that. That would change the whole nature of the piece he was presently performing upon, just by the little nuances like that almost no one, you'll spot them because he was clearly a rabid fan, and I see them as a fan, and you think there was nothing quite like, and even now there's still, I mean, there's some brilliant vocalists out there, people like Blind Guardian and all these kind of sort of semi, not operatic, but they need real singers. Dio stands out even now. I mean, what can you say? He's just glorious.
Now, speaking of a great vocal performance, I think for me, if we're talking about some of those early My Dying Bride records, one of Aaron's greatest performances, for me personally, is It Will Come off Like Gods of the Sun. I've always felt like, even though that's a very short song, like if there's a song that to me captures the apocalyptic, doomy essence of this band almost perfectly. It's that track, and particularly so when the violins first kick in, and Aaron is singing "We Will Be on Our Knees." I mean, it's just. I mean, that's goosebump stuff to this day. I mean, I'm a big audiophile, so that's one of the songs I've taken to many a hi-fi show and convinced someone foolish enough to let me play it on just crazy big expensive systems. But again, the firstly the recording is great on that record, but the just the denseness, the majesty of that moment where that violin kicks in is just second to none.
And it's a nice line. It's a very well played for and got line by Martin on that one, the violin. But oddly enough, that song was inspired, believe it or not, by, I think, there's a Sisters of Mercy spin-off band. I can't quite remember them, what the name was. They had a band that was quite very melodic metal, and Calvin was a big fan of them for a while. And he tried to not recreate them on this album, but one particular song, and that one's heavily inspired. But I'll try to remember the name before we finish this. It was just odd that we were listening, from an inspirational point of view, and thinking, so it just sounded even odd to me back then that it was being inspired by old gothic. They weren't doom. This was like gothic pop that had moved into the realm of metal in many respects. It was bizarre. I mean, that song, oddly enough, had a really strange live experience once, which is funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. We broke our keyboard. We had a Korg M1 back then, and we didn't have a spare, and it was broke. So we had to buy something that would just do for now. It's one of those keyboards that come with built-in drum loops. So in that song, there's a quiet part before it all kind of builds up. The guitar, that's nice and slow before it all builds up. And in the background, we can hear the drums going. What the fucking hell's that? So we're doing this really quiet piece on the guitar, expecting all this crescendo to come, and you can hear Bossa Nova in the background. It's like, what does Martin press? What the fucking hell is going on? He's pressing all these keys trying to make it stop. I mean, if you've seen Bad News, the first, the Bad News comedy series.
Yeah.
Vim Fuego's in his cellar and he's playing this, basically bastardizing Imagine by John Lennon. It's kind of like that, but live. We're like, I hope they can't hear this. This is coming through the monitors. We've got this strange drum beat through this really eclectic build-up piece. Oh, for fuck's sake, here we go.
I thought you were going to say that's where we got some of our best ideas for 34.787%.
When I was a kid, we loved Spinal Tap and both the Bad News rockumentaries, if you want to call them that. And you think, oh no, it won't be like that. These guys are just taking the piss. But then when you've been in a band a while, you actually realise it's just a documentary. In fact, it's exactly like being in a band. But maybe you don't explode as much on stage, but it's not far from it. It's the things that take place. And we've been lost under a stage in Holland, and the cleaner guy points at where we should be going. We think, fuck me, it is Spinal Tap. We have become man alive.
What is the most Spinal Tap, aside from this, the experience with It Will Come? What's the most Spinal Tap-esque experience you guys have had as a band?
I think probably the understage one where we were all wandering around lost, and it was just like pipes, for heating and that kind of thing. And we're like, this really is Spinal. That was probably the most, the one that stands out as being absolutely like Spinal Tap. The other one that we do, it's a bit more serious and not as much fun, is I shouldn't say this, but it's too late now. We call ourselves sometimes My Dying My Dying Tap or Spinal Bride, because of the amount of drummers we go through. Because if you remember in the Spinal Tap film, their drummers explode periodically and they have to play. But for absolute silliness, I mean, it was not funny at the time, but it's funny now. But being lost under a stage when you're due on, that's something to behold.
You saw they're doing a sequel to This Is Spinal Tap.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. I saw it pop up on Facebook the other day.
It's probably long overdue.
I think it's everybody like from the original crew. There we go. Published 3 days ago. This Is Spinal Tap 2 starts filming, confirms cameos.
Well, there you go.
And it looks like it'll have everybody in. And then in terms of cameos, It seems already announced Elton John, Paul McCartney, Garth Brooks.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, I think that'll be interesting. Did you ever see? It's completely different, but like also music parody satire. Do you ever see Pop Star Never Stop Stopping? It's fucking hysterical. It's depends on the kind of humor you find funny, but it's very funny. Although I would peg you, and I base it purely because of the fact that you're clearly a man with good taste, and you also were of a certain generation. I would peg you as a Brass Eye fan.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I mean, it's something that could never in a million years be screened on television nowadays.
No, I mean, we're still big fans. We were talking about this at work the other day, and Brass Eye came up, believe it or not, because I don't remember the main character's name from Brass Eye, the guy who wrote it, but he does. Bruce Morris. He plays the boss of the Renham Industries in the IT Crowd. Now that resonates with me on a number of things. The guys who wrote the IT Crowd wrote Father Ted, which is I think phenomenally brilliant. And I work in IT, so we're constantly telling people to turn it off and turn it back on. But we don't have that machine that automatically does it. We have to do it ourselves. And to find him, in this playing basically himself from Brass Eye, it's fucking brilliant. Yeah, it's that I could watch that all day long. And we quote it in the office, but we can't quote it out loud.
No, definitely not. So one question that I never asked Aaron this question, but I'm dying to know, given the things that you and I have spoken about regarding the history of the band. Can you remember the first time that you met Aaron?
Yes.
I'm curious to know what he was like as a young man. What was that meeting like? How did it happen?
I was in a band, and depending on who you speak to, it was either called abiosis, which I think is incorrect, or the band was called abiosis, which means lifelessness back then. And it wasn't my band. It was the band of a friend. Well, I don't see him at all anymore, but it was a friend then, so I'm sure he's a friend now, called Paul Evans. And it was a doom metal band. It was a death metal band, or trying to be a death metal band. And we rehearsed in Bradford at what was then called Voltage, which became the rehearsal room we're in now, which is in fact, no, it wasn't called Voltage. It doesn't matter. It's so far back in history, but it's 1989, 1990. And he came to one of our rehearsals. And what stood out was we were all dressed in black and being, heavy metal combat pants, black T-shirts, that kind of thing. And he had this white jumper on, which just didn't fit with the whole thing. And he had this sort of strange look about him. It looked a bit like like a scarecrow that had been out in the rain and the wind and the rain for too long. A really bedraggled look, but he'd sit and read a strange comic and suck on Ribena, and it's like, who the fucking hell is this weirdo? It's that kind of thing. But he had a wicked sense of humour, and well, I suppose he still does. And because he knew some of the guys who were in the band, and we all sort of became pally. But I didn't know he was interested in singing or anything like that. It was just a couple of meetings. Then we'd seen. We used to go to a place called Frog and Toad, which is a very famous, I think it's a roundabout now, but it was a famous nightclub sort of many years ago, and we met there a few times. But I think the first time was he just sat in the rehearsal room at the end of a bias's rehearsal and listened to us try Bright Song, and we were pretty shocking. I have to admit, we were fairly poor. But we were just kids having a blast, you know what I mean? And then later,
what style of death metal were you guys doing, just out of interest?
It was so bad it never really made it to a style, but I think the singer who's since passed away, sadly, a guy called Daz, was brilliant, and he was fucking massive, and he could sing. Well, for death metal he could sing. He was a massive Carcass fan. So I mean, you can look this up. YouTube has a version at Biases. It's called the demos. We only did one demo. It's called Noxious Emanation. And it's just really naive, you know that confident naivety I spoke of earlier. Yeah. Well, it's none of that. It's just naive. But I mean, we were having a good time. It made us. It's. I mean, I look back and I think, oh my god, it's like looking at childhood photographs again.
I'm just checking out the lyrics on Metal Archive now, and you've got human consumption, captured by cannibals, soon to pay the price, stripped down to the flesh, for limbs they eat and slice. I mean, that is such a 1990s death metal lyric. It's unbelievable.
It's real. I mean, considering that I mean, I wasn't involved in really the music and the lyrics of this band. I was not necessarily a bystander, but I was new that this was their band, and they brought me in on kind of just to fill the guitars out. But they were really helpful. I mean, in fact, they were brilliant to me, really, and I really enjoyed it. But the lyrics, even I cringed at the time. But what am I going to do? That this guy's 8 foot tall, twice the size of me. I mean, this guy's broad. If he's writing these lyrics, you stand there and you go, well, they're the fucking lyrics, man. That's it. No one's arguing with him. But we thought we were serious, that we weren't a joke band. We were serious. And I remember we played a gig. I think we didn't headline, but we were supposed to be supporting Whiplash, if you remember them, going back a few years. And it was one of those where we didn't have mobile phones and the internet didn't exist, and it became obvious Whiplash weren't coming. It was one of those kind of gigs. And then everybody that was there, I think Deviated Instinct, I don't know if you remember them. They ended up headlining, and we lent them some of our equipment. And a biasis played at the Bradford Queen's Hall. There's a live video of that, and it's our crowning moment. We did a cover of Death. The guitarist Paul's a massive Death fan, and he used from his house. This is how not everybody had a phone, and he'd ring Chuck from his mum's phone. And we'd speak to Chuck's mum, who always was defending his son, who was never there, a son rather, because obviously we were like some uber nutcase fans ringing from England trying to get hold of Chuck. And he sometimes got through. It was fucking amazing. I was like, what, really? Chuck Skulden, are you ringing him? And we'd speak to his mum.
Yeah.
And we all got signed double gatefold Leprosy albums out of it. It was fucking amazing. So we were big Death fans, and we did a cover of a Sacrificial off the first album. And it's not too bad, you know what I mean? And because we ran out of time, we did it again. So it was I don't know. There's an element thinking back that we were, as much as we thought we were serious and tough death metalers, we were on in hindsight rather somewhat comical, I suppose. But it served a purpose. It got me from Abiasis into My Dying Bride, and that meeting with us in the Abiasis rehearsal. That's how. Without that, I wouldn't have known that he was part of that. Him and Calvin would ultimately be the other half, that the genesis, if you will, of what My Dying Bride was. When we split, Abiasis had Rick on drums, so it was me and Rick on one side, guitars and drums, and then on the other side was Calvin on guitar and Aaron on vocals. Now we didn't have a bassist, but we weren't too bothered about that. As you can imagine, they're useful, but they're not. They're useful, but
they're not essential. Yeah.
No. And that joke runs deep in this band. And I played that very safe then as well.
Yeah.
We just had 2 guitars, vocals and drums, and when it all came apart, they weren't happy with what their half of their other band. It never even got to having a name, and we were sort of falling out a little bit about Abiasis. I can't remember why. So we said, shall we just team up and see what's what? So we met, and it was just great fun. And we on our first rehearsal, I think we got through most of what became Symphonaire Infernus, which is the first EP, and a solid part of what became Vast Choirs, which made it onto the album. And from there on, we didn't go, Abiasis was finished and whatever. I think they were called Neolithic, but they never really got to the point of even announcing it. And then that Neolithic outfit was done, and we then plodded off and looked for a name for ourselves. Obviously, it became MDB. But yeah, it's strange little meetings that become major events later on when you look back.
As a guitarist, having come from that old school, because I was kind of laughing when you were saying, about you guys took yourselves very seriously, but that was really the way everyone was in the death metal scene at the time. I mean, everyone remembers the infamous Glenn Benton interview where he's, sitting there saying that he's making this music to gain entrance into the 7 gates of hell and, all that shit. But like what I was curious about, as you were talking about biases and how you got started. You really forged your own style, your own signature as a guitarist. And immediately as we're talking, I'm thinking of the second of Three Bells, the new single you guys just dropped, last week. As soon as that main riff kicks in, and you've got that lead going, you can see you on the video, and you're doing your thing. To me, that's what's incredible about My Dying Bride and about Paradise Lost, is that you guys really forged your own style and really forged your own signature, went against the grain of the time pretty aggressively. But for you, how did that occur? Was it just kind of a natural thing where you just kept on playing, doing different stuff, and it was there ever, I guess, what I'm driving at, was there ever like a conscious feeling that you were doing something different, or you were forging a something new? You were breaking new territory in what you were doing.
No, I'm not really. I'm not trained in any way, so I don't really understand musical theory or any of those things. So I kind of bimble my way through just by hearing what I think we should be playing. I don't necessarily know. Like Sean's, he's got some music. Deliberate music training, and he can understand some of the forms that we're doing, and he'll come out with these clever words. And I think it doesn't really mean anything to me. That just I'm a bit basic. So I think if anything, it's a little bit of ignorance that's kept me in this particular style, if you will, whether it's useful or not. And also because I'm just basically a rhythm guitarist who likes melodies. I've never really chased or practiced lead. It's never really been my thing. And there's only one lead guitarist that I could in fact, really say that I think is absolutely astounding, impressive. Well, in fact, there's a few, but the main one stands out is, it's Randy Rhoads. But that's because when you look, his note choice and his style was so distinct. There's plenty of brilliant guitar players. Jeff Loomis stands out as he makes me want to put the guitar down and never pick it up. You watch the way he operates, and it's phenomenal. But so for me, it's just I'm quite happy. In fact, that's probably I'm quite happy just playing this type of music in this type of band, and because thankfully we're not chasing fame and fortune in a I won't say that we're not serious, but we're not. We work for a living, so we're not having to rely on. Thankfully, we're not having to rely on my guitar skills to pay the mortgages, because we'd be in fucking big trouble if we did. So the style of music can be kept where it is, and all I do is I just play things I like. I'm not, and obviously within the sort of, I think we mentioned this, the umbrella that is My Dying Bride. As much as there's a broad scope to do lots of different music, it still very much has to, unless we're suddenly going to attempt to be, this new pop metal that
Guns N' Roses,
something like that. So we're very much, I won't say we're pigeonholed as such, but we know I certainly know our place, and I'm perfectly happy with it. And Second of Three Bells is probably a close favourite of mine on the new album, up with Apocalyptist. But the harmony, or the main sort of musical harmony piece that solves the Second of Three Bells together, particularly the funerary end, where I remove my harmony side and just play what we've considered a death knell note, because we deliberately, on all those other albums, we've put 13 bells on. We've hidden them, all of them, and it's hard to find. But if you know they're there, you can find them. And on this one, we chose not to. We decided to not bother with that this time, because no one fucking knew anyway. So what was the point? So in this one, I've actually used the sort of a knell-esque note, if there is such a thing. Someone with more musical training than me will have to work out what that means. But that we're all stood around in the rehearsal room going, well, you're doing nothing. You're literally playing one note. Because everybody else is doing their movements musically, it works. It just so works. So that's the kind of simple and yet effective approach we have. Whether I wouldn't say I tried hard to be this bad. It just came.
Well, no, I actually would say, you tend to be, you're very humble about it, but what I love about your style is actually quite similar to what I really love about Greg McIntosh's style. Is you allow the space to talk in addition to the music that you're playing. Right. So again, let's take Second of Three Bells. You're not overloading the listener with notes and riffs, and it's nothing is overcomplicated. You are allowing the melody, or whatever you're creating, you're allowing it room to breathe, and you're allowing that empty space to almost kind of let the song build an atmosphere of its own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
and I think I think there's a real art to that, because a lot of people do it and just fuck it up completely. There's a couple of masters that can actually do it properly, and I would absolutely put you down as one of them.
Well, thank you very much. That's really appreciated. I understand what I'm doing, but whether it's as clever as people and yourself claim, I don't know. I'm trying to be pleasing myself in many respects. But what I will say, because you mentioned something that resonated with me, because that's what I'm doing, is particularly on the harmony of this one. When we were doing the mix, I'm talking to Mark Minor, and I described it. We don't want to drench it in delay and reverb that it ruins it, but I described it as I want to be able to hear behind the note. I want to be able to hear that the note has a resonance, and then as the other notes come through, you're either drawn with that one or you stick with this one, and to try and give those notes clarity and have the confidence, like you said, not to overwhelm it with notes. Takes some doing, because when you're writing these things, you're always, well, certainly I am second guessing myself and sort of self editing, if you will. And you think, is it too simple? Is it too dull? Is it too this? But then having the confidence, not naive confidence this time, actual confidence to let those notes just have that, like you described, have the space, and be damned if you do and damned if you don't. But once then you put the song together and you see that the bass is moving this way and the guitar moving that way and this one's going this way. It works for me. It certainly works for me. And we've had, and most people that have listened to that song think we're barking up the right tree. So it's difficult. I think having the confidence not to overwhelm it with stuff, that's tricky. Less is more is probably what we'd say.
So I've got two more questions I want to ask you. The first is, you guys have been through various peaks and valleys, ups and downs. What has kept you, I think, probably in the band for its entirety, and what has been the secret to the relationship that you've had with Aaron? Because that's clearly certainly one of the cores of this band and of this band's longevity.
Well, this is kind of what I do. This is just what I do. So it's not. I'm not necessarily in the band. I won't say I am the band, but it's not far from it. This is what I do. Everybody else is just dragged along with me to a degree. So it for me, and it's kind of. I'm not saying it's going to last forever, but it's kind of what I've wanted to do, and I'm enjoying it. I've enjoyed doing this album. So it's just it's kind of like second nature. It's like, what would you do if you weren't doing this type of thing? And Aaron plays his part. He comes in and he does well, because the essence of the sort of frontman vibe is Aaron. There's no avoiding that. So, and as long as the balance is there, and he's getting what he wants out of it, and I'm getting what I want out of it, and the rest of the band, that's what keeps it ticking along. Because ultimately, there's only a few moments of where all the cogs need to be running at all the same time, at all the same speed, and that's at gigs. Other than that, I tend to be doing most of the thinking, most of the sort of background work, and keeping the day-to-day things going. I do most of the arranging for almost everything. So as long as I'm ticking along and it's working as it should, everything's fine. And as long as everybody else shows up when they should, it's fine. So it's not full time. It's not for them, and it's not full on. So it's fairly easy to enjoy this ride. Actually, you show up for photo shoots. Show up for the video that we've just done, the second of Three Bells. We've got some behind the scenes footage, and it was great fun. It was I won't say a jolly old day out, because we have to sort of pretend to work for a little bit, but over behind the scenes stuff, when it comes out, you'll see we're fucking about. Probably we shouldn't be, but we were ruining his image, but not in a way that we can talk about though. So that'll probably pop up and show people behind the scenes just how the band collectively operate, and you can sense that there's a camaraderie, there's a bit of fun, we're all laughing and joking, that kind of thing. So it's not all doom and gloom. it has its moments, but they're few and far between. So I think keeping going, that's the easy part. You just turn up.
So final question, and this is purely to satisfy my curiosity, but, we spoke about some of the, for me, kind of signature My Dying Bride songs, Wreckage of My Flesh, Feel the Misery, and obviously we spoke about, some of the earlier material. But if there were a song or a record that when it's all said and done, you really would hang your hat on and go, out of every single thing in my musical legacy, that's the one thing I want to be most known for, what would that be?
Well, that's a fucking impossible question.
The Wreckage of My Flesh is the correct answer, of course, but you can say what you want.
I do like that song, and I think I'd struggle with that, because the problem I've got at the moment with a sensible and singular answer is I'm hooked on this album. Or, as I nearly actually said, hooked on Monkey Phonics, to quote South Park. But the one I'm most proud, well, in fact, it's a toss-up again between Apocalyptist and the second of Three Bells. Also, if I quickly remember that we did Ghost of Orion, I love the Solace, because I think we dared there. When I was going back to Less is More, we dared to do something with that particular song. And then another one that's, I don't think, the actual song itself, The Ghost of Orion. Listen to it. There's fuck all there. It's bleak. To say that less is more, but the less is less. So, if I had to just go for it, I'd say the song "The Light at the End of the World."
I had a hunch that you were gonna pick something off that album.
Well, there's two reasons. One, the subject matter, I kind of sold it to Aaron, which I do periodically. I'll have a subject. I don't do the lyrics. Well, in fact, I did the lyrics on the song "Feel the Misery," but that's beside the point. But so I sold him the subject matter on the actual song "The Light at the End of the World," and painted the picture, which allowed him to produce the lyrics. And also because it was kind of the first one I did as like a single guitar player, even though I did have some help behind the scenes by a couple of friends. That's kind of one that I think put after 34, which we spoke of. That's kind of one that I thought allowed MDB to sort of progress in its more natural form, if you will, to where we are today. And there's some, I listen back to it, there's some all right songs on it, you know what I mean? She's the Dark's been a very positive staple of our live set for 12, 15, God knows how many years now, if not longer, because people like the punchiness in between the sort of more doomier stuff. So, but that song itself, with it being like, I don't know, massively long, sort of classic MDB style, and it was, and is the subject as well is dear to my heart, and it was the one that brought us back, if you will, not necessarily from the brink. I think we would have been fine, but it's certainly a landmark moment.
It was the core, the formalized course correction. It was like when you kind of finally felt like the train was back on the tracks.
Yeah.
Andrew, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I'm delighted for you guys with how good this new record sounds. Like I said, for me, I enjoyed the Ghost of Orion, but to me, this is right back to the strength of Feel the Misery, and I'm super excited for people to hear what the rest of it sounds like, because I have a hunch this is going to be high up on a lot of best of lists of 2024 when the roll call comes.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and carry on doing the good work and stay out of trouble.
I will try my very best. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it, my friends. The single you just listened to, the second of 3 Bells by My Dying Bride, is possibly one of my favorite My Dying Bride songs of all time, and that is saying something. As you would have gathered from the conversation that Andrew and I just had, I'm a rather large fan. This brand new record, Immortal Binding, we'll talk about nearer the time that it gets released. That release date, of course, is April the 19th, courtesy of Nuclear Blast. But it is absolutely My Dying Bride in peak form. Whether or not you were a fan of things like Feel the Misery, you absolutely want to make sure that you mark that date on your calendar, because this is going to be a contender for one of the very best records of the year. I want to say thank you very much to Andrew for his time. What a blast having that conversation, and probably even a greater degree of thanks for accommodating me after the technical fuck-up that we had. You will have noticed if you watch this on YouTube that my T-shirt miraculously changed during the last 21 minutes of the conversation, and Andrew had a shave. So we had a bit of a mix-up with StreamYard that needed fixing, so he came back on. We ended up ending the podcast slightly differently than we had originally done, so, it wasn't kind of a pre-rehearsed repeat of what we had spoken about before, but what a fun time catching up with him, and he will most certainly be back on the podcast at some point. Hopefully we can do one in person. I'll need to see when and how we can make that happen. Right now, my friends, I want to get some new releases on your radar that I think is the fucking business. We're going to start off with the Death Doom merchants Civerous, who hail from Los Angeles, California. They have put out their new sophomore album, Maze Envy, and some of you will recall me being rather thrilled by their first and last single that they put out on that record on a recent weekly news rant. And I can tell you the good news, the full length definitely does not disappoint. Being a $20 spin release, it's not going to surprise you that the lads in Civerous aren't exactly an outfit that like to do things by the book. They set a very ominous tone at the beginning of this record with a violin-led instrumental that sounds to me like it could have been plucked straight out of a Stanley Kubrick movie. Also has shades of the great Johnny Greenwood, particularly the work that he did on The Master and There Will Be Blood. But it helps set the tone for the album, and then the proceedings kick off thoroughly with the excellent Shrouded in Crystals, and that, if memory serves me correctly, was the single that we listened to on the news rant. The guitar sound, as you will recall if you were paying attention, is filthy. It's complemented by this really thick, dense, pummeling bottom end, and then the brilliantly named Lord Fowl's vocals really kind of have this deep, guttural, almost cavernous feel to them. Reminds me a little bit of John from Incantation, but it works really, really well. The real magic, though, about Civerous is that they are not a band that stick to a formula. They never let up in their creativity. I alluded to that a second ago when I introduced the record, but every song off of this record inevitably spins off into a couple of different creative tangents. And sometimes it is punishingly brutal, sometimes it's exquisitely atmospheric, sometimes it's aggressive, sometimes it's all of the above. But Maze Envy is a fantastic album, and it is absolutely not one that you're going to want to miss. If you're after more of the brutal and less of basically everything else, then you need to look no further than the new record by Knoxville, Tennessee's Brodequin. The album is called Harbinger of Woe, and it sounds a little something like this. So for the uninitiated, this is a comeback album of sorts. Brodequin originally got off the ground back in 1998. They released 3 albums between 2000 and 2004, the last of which was the well-received Methods of Execution. 2 decades later, and Harbinger of Woe presents their first full-length record in a hot minute. They did put out an EP back in 2021, which was kind of like a taster of this album. Certainly took their sweet time putting out a full-length, but over the course of 10 tracks and a hair past 30 minutes, these boys deliver a fucking masterclass in chaotic, brutal death metal with enough groove, enough variation, and enough just good old-fashioned top-tier songwriting to ensure that the record has plenty of memorable moments to go along with absolutely caving your skull in. The material benefits massively from a far better production than I've heard on any of their previous records, and as an added bonus, history nerds get to revel in bassist and vocalist Jamie Bailey's obsessive delving into factually accurate tales of yesteryear. So check that out. It's available on Season of Mist right now. Next up, we have Du Dommes Till Dort, the 8th album by Norwegian black and roll protagonists Khold. At this point in their career, Khold clearly have a formula that both they and their fans are very comfortable with, and they have certainly demonstrated no intention of mixing things up for any reason whatsoever. If you're a fan, like me, of what they do, then that is absolutely goddamn fine too, because these guys have a knack for writing riffs that are catchier than a case of crabs. All 9 songs on Du Dommes Till Dort are unyielding, groovy, belligerent, infinitely repeatable, and at times this actually reminds me a little bit of what AC/DC in Bon Scott's era might have sounded like if they had decided to try their hands at making some Norwegian black metal. Highly recommended. Finally, we have the debut EP by a project that should be on many of your radars already if you are tenured members of the Legion. I premiered no less than 2 tracks by this band over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. I speak, of course, of Conspiracy X, featuring the man who never sleeps, otherwise known as Matt Brizzo of Sick and Spells of Torment. The EP is called Flesh Fucker. The music contained on its 5 tracks is as abrasive and blood-soaked as the title suggests. However, rather than drawing on his love for black metal, Matt and Conspiracy X instead delve into brutal death metal, industrial noise, and at times even avant-garde. They managed to kind of blend all of these elements in a way that always sounds very natural, very unique, is extremely compelling and atmospheric, and as much as the EP can leave you scratching your head over what the fuck you just heard, it is also one that you are going to be eager to repeat in equal measure. It is no secret that I'm a fan of every single thing that Matt does, but I will say this. Conspiracy X is unquestionably my favorite of every single thing that Matt has put out, and I suspect that it may be yours too. Here now, my friends, is the title track off of this EP, the song entitled Flesh Fucker. You just heard Flesh Fucker off the EP of the same name by Conspiracy X, featuring, as I dubbed him, the man who never sleeps, Matt Prizzo, friend of the podcast, but that wouldn't grant him any leniency from yours truly, but he wouldn't need it because the EP is fucking sensational, as I said. Make sure you check it out. I will post a link to the Conspiracy X Bandcamp in the description to the podcast, and of course, if you let Matt know who sent you, I would greatly appreciate it should you buy yourself some music. Right now, my friends, if you found the Amazon Prime remake of the movie Roadhouse engrossing, then it's time to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Alright, my friends, we kick off on metalstorm.net, as always, the greatest metal news website in all the land. Leaves Eyes are unleashing a brand new music video for the song Hammer of the Gods. It says here, as part of their newly released full-length Myths of Fate, Leaves Eyes present an Alexander Krull directed music video for the song Hammer of the Gods. I am not the biggest fan of Leaves Eyes, but I would hate for the news rant to become something where I'm just cherry picking things that I know I'm probably going to like. So, with that in mind, let us hear what Hammer of the Gods sounds like. All right, let's start with the positives. I think the production is cool. Nice, beefy. It's very, there's a high level of fidelity to the production. Like, you can hear every instrument. There's nice separation between all of the instruments, air, as they say, between each track. I think that Alexander Krull actually sounds pretty cool, and he's an oddball character, let's be honest. If you have seen the music video for A Taste of Sin by his main band, Atrocity, you're going to know exactly what I mean. This dude doesn't operate with the greatest degree of self-awareness. And delving into the history of Leaves Eyes, some of you will probably know that this was a band started by Liv Christine, formerly of Theatre of Tragedy, and the entire crew over at Atrocity. Liv Christine was married to Alex. They got divorced, I think, somewhere around 2015 or 2016, supposedly because Alex had picked himself up a little something on the side, or had a gumad, as they say. But you know, just not that I'm condoning his behavior, but you know, when I say he's an oddball character, you watch the video for A Taste of Sin. Look at the album covers for most of Atrocity's albums that weren't kind of pure death metal, things like Werk 80, 1 and 2. You know, the guy, you know, he's got a bit of a fondness for the kinky stuff, as they say. Anyway, that aside, Liv Christine is now out of the band, replaced by Elena Serala. And Elena's vocals, I think, are okay. I mean, I say this also almost sounding like this is the first time I'm hearing Liv's eyes in years. That is because I am. I haven't properly listened to anything that they've done, most likely since Nort, that came out in 2009, I believe. So anyway, back to the positives. Good production. I think Alex's death metal vocals sound quite cool. And probably the best part of the song to me is the interplay between Elena and Alex in the chorus. I actually think the riff in the chorus is very catchy and very interesting. But the song itself to me is kind of, this to me is it's a vestige of what women's role in metal used to be in yesteryear, if that makes sense. You know, a lot of these bands were coming out like Nightwish and, you know, bands like that where, you know, woman is doing operatic vocals over heavy music, and sometimes somebody's doing a bit of, you know, death metal vocaling or male singing over it. But it always kind of seemed to have the same vibe, you know, very European, except for Evanescence, one of the worst bands ever. But, you know, mostly very European. It just all seemed to follow a similar formula. The song is no different. You know, when it comes to what women are doing in metal right now, there's far more interesting things going on. You know, I don't need to repeat, because I'm sure you guys are sick of me talking about it, but, you know, just how great that last Johnny the Boy record was. You know, not necessarily metal, but certainly dark, heavy music. The new Chelsea Wolf album, as I've said before, absolute masterpiece. You know, the Girls in Crypta, again, might not necessarily be my tempo, but I think that what they're doing is at the very least interesting, and it's a little bit different to some of the other things that are out there right now. And again, if you can go and tour with Morbid Angel and not get booed off the stage, you instantly have my respect. I don't necessarily think that Leave's eyes could open for Morbid Angel. Not that I think it would be a good idea to put them on the bill either way, but yeah, they wouldn't be able to tour with Morbid Angel and not face the wrath of the crowd. Limbonic Art appear to be back. It says here, Norwegian black metal unit Limbonic Art have joined forces with Kirk Productions and signed a new contract for the band's upcoming record, the successor to 2017's Spectre Abysm. More info in due time, no songs or anything like that, but I do like me some Limbonic Art, and I actually thought their last couple of records were especially interesting, so I will be looking out for that. Next up, more Norwegian news, or more news out of Norway, I should say. Norwegians Whoredom Rife are presenting Den Frede Makt, the title track of the upcoming album, which is planned to be released by Territor Possessions in mid-May 2024. Details of the latter coming soon. This album cover looks fucking sensational, and if I'm very honest, I don't personally think Whoredom Rife have really put a foot wrong since they first burst onto the scene. So let's hear what this new single sounds like. One of the things I like the most about this song is there's a real hypnotic feel to the riffing. It kind of reminds me of Till Minna, which is an album, again, I've evangelized on this podcast many times. It's a release by a band called Treldom, of course, featuring Gol, the infamous Gol of Goldsveard and Gorgoroth. But yeah, there's that similarly hypnotic feel to this. It's fast, but it kind of has this epic, but at the same time, quite nasty atmosphere to it, and that just works very well. I think Kel's, I think that's how I pronounce his name. Kel's vocals are fucking the absolute business. He sounds raging, but again, raging in a way that, even though he's not mixing up his vocals with loads of lower register growling and stuff like that. He's just one of those people that's able to vocal and not sound boring ever. He can, when I say able to vocal using the exact same tone, the exact same inflection, and never sound boring. I like the production. I think the production is, it's raspy, it's gritty, filthy, nasty. It just suits this down to the ground. Like I said, they're just not a band that have really put a foot wrong, in my view. I really enjoyed Winds of Wrath that they put out back in 2021. I know a lot of the Legion did as well. This, to me, sounds like it's just the next step up from that. So let's give it another 60 seconds. Top notch, absolutely, unequivocally top notch. Very much looking forward to that record. Last week I spoke about some of, was it last week or the week before? I spoke about some of the records I was looking forward to most coming out in the next 9 months that you can absolutely put on the list as well. All right, let's move on. Unleash the Archers have debuted a new song called Ghost in the Mist. We're going to give that one a skip. They, of course, have come under fire because of some AI use in one of their music videos. Yeah, their music fucking stinks, so it's not even... It doesn't feel like it's even worth bothering to listen to whether the music meets fits with the use of AI. It probably does. Venomous Echoes have or are about to release their sophomore record, Split Formations and Infinite Mania. Via the Bandcamp widget below, it says here you can give a listen to 3 preview tracks. We will listen to the song Miscreated Pustules. I'm going to pause there because I think we're about to experience a tale of two halves. when that song started, it felt like I was thrown straight into the middle of a track off of Cannibal Corpse's Tomb of the Mutilated. It has that very old school death metal riffing, not necessarily my favorite kind of old school death metal riffing. I find that almost sort of scale-based riffing, if you guys know what I mean. You go from sort of high notes to low notes and back again. I find that to be pretty boring. There's a lot of bands that have done it. They've done it to death. It doesn't really do anything for me. But then the song kind of starts to take shape as it progresses. Once you get through that piece, it starts to get a little bit more interesting. I like the vocals. I like how unhinged they sound. My hunch is these are programmed drums, but I think the band has done a pretty good job. Although I say band, it's actually a one-man project, spearheaded by a gentleman named Ben Van Wielden. But yeah, so I think he's done a good job with the programming. But as I said, that beginning, not quite my taste, but it definitely seems to start to pick up in at least something. It picks up in momentum as the song progresses. And the part that we've just paused on now sounds very promising. So let's get back to it.
This will make you feel better. 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 This will make you feel better.
So it goes from this imperial, triumphant, avant-garde kind of vibe straight into modern black and death metal par excellence, and then into this fucking crazy guitar solo, which I think actually works quite well too. If they could track my thinking on a graph, the song would start at, undecided at best. And then all of a sudden there's a sharp spike up and we hit top tier. Because the second half of that song, I think, works brilliantly well. I'm not ready to give this a top notch just yet. I will want to hear the whole album when it comes out, but it's promising. It's definitely very, very promising. I think it's enough to merit it a thumbs up at the very least. Okay, we continue, friends. And as I look for the next article, one thing I don't believe I've actually mentioned just yet, the new trailer dropped for the Crow remake, and I've got to say it looks way worse than I thought that the movie actually would end up being. The design of the main character is basically an AI rendering of Darby Allin from AEW as Eric Draven. They seem to have removed the Sarah character altogether, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I did find her a bit annoying, but she was also the springboard for one of the most unintentionally funny moments in the original Crow. The whole, for those of you who've seen it, you'll immediately recognize this. Somebody already bought me dinner. The police. Which is fucking hysterical. But yeah, they seem to have removed Sarah, and the villain seems to have gone from being a fucking total badass in the original to just being some faceless banker-looking motherfucker. So that one will get a very firm miss from me. What won't get a miss is the new Alien, Romulus, I think it's called. Directed by the same dude that did Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake. That surprisingly looks very, very good. It kind of looks like he's taken it back to the horror origins of the franchise. And I am very much on board for it. So hopefully the trailer, is a precursor of the quality to come on the movie when it actually gets released. That new Crow trailer though, oh my god, it looks like a fucking load of shit. All right, Veil of Punath have dropped a new single. It says here, Denver, Colorado-based technical death metal formation Veil of Punath have premiered Burning Light, their new single from their forthcoming third long player, Between the Worlds of Life and Death. It comes out on May the 24th, 2024 via Willowtip Records, and Scott Hansen apparently directed the accompanying music video. So this band features no less than 3 members of Abigail Williams. I think partly why I let the song run a little longer is because I kept thinking, is it a surprise that it should feature members from Abigail Williams, or does it make sense? I'm undecided on that. But either way, I wouldn't have been surprised if it featured members of Winds of Plague, or honestly, even Fleshguard Apocalypse. It does sound an awful lot more interesting to me than Fleshguard Apocalypse. I'll just say that right off the bat. Even though there's dabbling in kind of a similar style of technical death metal, this is much, much more interesting to me. It sounds much more edgy. I like the melodies. I like the riffing. Gabe Sieber, their drummer, is a fucking savage. He sounds just unreal. Overall, I'm digging it. I like the music video as well. I kind of probably slightly sarcastically said Scott Hansen. That's kind of just a recurring trope when I do the news rant, purely because whenever they post like a news item on Metal Storm, they'll always talk about these folks that you've never heard of before, in glowing terms, like the cream of the crop of the industry. But kudos to you, Scott Hansen. You did a pretty decent job with the music video. It looks like it's got relatively high production values, which I don't want to insult them, but when it comes to Willowtip Records releases, I'm not sure I'm necessarily used to. But so far so good. That little bit that they just threw in there, I love little surprises like that. That sounds so fucking cool, and it just really helps elevate the song from an atmosphere perspective, just from my overall enjoyment of the song. Thumbs up. I like it very much, and very much looking forward to hearing what the rest of the record sounds like. All right, Necrot have unleashed a new track called Drill the Skull. It says here, Draw the Skull is the second single from the upcoming Necrot third full-length, Lifeless Birth, which is out now. The new outing from the Californians will land in stores worldwide on April the 12th, 2024. Let's listen. I had to laugh. The opening line, I can't remember when my lobotomy happened. I thought it was very amusing. Song itself, it's not bad. I can definitely see people that are into this style of death metal really liking it, but man, we are spoiled for choice when it comes to death metal of the very highest quality at the moment. Skeletal Remains, Brodequin. There are just so many bands that are putting out albums right now this year, albums that came out last year. That is unfortunately a very big step up above this. And I will say this: the misstep for me here is in the pacing of those vocals. It just doesn't work. I spoke about it last week with Jason Pepiat, trying to squeeze in too many decibels in a single line of singing. Doesn't work. You have to have that rhythm. You have to have that pacing in your voice for me to be, or as far as I'm concerned, for you to be an effective death metal vocalist. And Luca Indrio, he sounds like he can muster a pretty deep growl. He's just not. He doesn't compare to some of the very best of the best in the scene. So yeah, like I said, I'm undecided on it. Undecided to the point of not wanting to completely roast it and give it a thumbs down, but yeah, it's just not something that's made much of an impression on me. Let's put it that way. The Troops of Doom are putting out a new album. Brazilian death thrashers, the Troops of Doom and Alma Mater Records proudly announce the release of a Mass to the Grotesque studio record, which will be due out on May the 31st, 2024. I absolutely loved the last Troops of Doom record, which was their debut. That, of course, featured one Gyro, is it Gyro T? Of Sepultura fame. Yes, Gyro Tormentor Guids, who was in a very early incarnation of Sepultura. The Troops of Doom, unsurprisingly, sounds like a well-produced early incarnation of Sepultura. And Alma Mater Records, just out of interest, is owned by, I believe, Fernando Ribeiro of Moonspell. I spoke about it at the time, and I will strongly recommend that if you have not listened to Antichrist Reborn, the debut record by these guys, make sure you check that out because it is fantastic blackened thrash. I expect the same from a Mass to the Grotesque. It's a shame they don't have a song, but no doubt when they release their first single, we'll be giving that a listen. But very, very excited about that. Next up, we've got Heresiarch, is again how I believe I will pronounce that. It says here, New Zealand-based Heresiarch have unveiled a new music piece called Noose Above the Abyss. The track comes off their oncoming Edifice album, which drops on April the 12th via Iron Bonehead Productions. Heresiarch are going to be listened to based on two criteria. Number one, they're from New Zealand, home of the All Blacks and home of Ulcerate. If you don't know who the All Blacks are, that's not a racist term. It's the national rugby team. So most of you guys probably know that. But what's the name? Iron Bonehead Productions, obviously also great. And then just circling back to New Zealand, it's also the home of Ulcerate, who are fucking superb. So let's hear what Noose Above the Abyss sounds like. Not bad. It's technical, it's chaotic. I like the production. Fun fact, the vocalist of this band, known only as NH, is also a member of the band Verberis. And if you remember my 2022, I think it was a top 30 of... in fact, I know it was a top 30 of the year. That Verberis record, Adumbration of the Veiled Logos, was one of my favorites of the year, and it is a fucking masterpiece. I also happened to notice, as I was scanning over Metal Archives while that song was playing, Verberis are just about to release a new album called The Apophatic Wilderness, which comes out on March the 29th. I don't know how that slipped under my radar, but apparently a single has already been released. I think we should give that a quick listen. I'm going to head over to YouTube. I'll be back in a sec. I found it. Apparently the single dropped 4 days ago. Shamefully, it was not put out, or a news release was not put out on Metal Storm. That may well be because somebody over at Norma Evangelium Diaboli dropped the ball, but who gives a fuck, because I am dying to hear what this sounds like. We're going to listen to another 60 seconds very shortly. Let me just say this right now. As soon as that song started, when the guitars and the drums kicked in, I knew straight away top 5 contender of 2024 without a shadow of a doubt. Like I said, Adumbration of the Veiled Logos was fucking excellent. I'm not surprised this is great, but good God, that is fucking beyond top notch. Just wow. I'm going to skip ahead by a few minutes because I want to hear what it sounds like when the vocals kick in. But I mean, those opening riffs, melodies, what have you, fucking superb. Absolutely magnificent. I love how clearly you can hear the bass there as well, and it's not like, I mean, it's clearly very technical bass, but it's not as showy as maybe some releases where, you know, that bass sticks out. It just has that sort of low end rumble, you know, and you can hear the bassist, you know, playing very carefully with the drummer. Yeah, fucking brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm so happy about this. Like I said, I wasn't even aware that they're putting out a new record. As far as the Heresy arc, it's decent, but it's sadly very overshadowed by what we just heard. Okay, Selbst are putting out a new single, and once again, between the new Ulcerate, Selbst, and Ecclese coming out this year, Deborah Morty Records are going to have them a hell of a 2024. This, of course, comes with the seal of approval from Vince Voll of Blood Aus Nord fame. He was the one who actually posted about the record before I think even Deborah Morty had posted about it, so he's fucking completely in love with it. I love both of the previous Selbst records. I'm definitely going to try and get Jonathan back on the podcast. He was a great guest the last time he was on. And if this band get bigger, just remember who's been talking about them since fucking 2019. So, all right. 1 month before their upcoming new album, Despondency Chord Progressions, it says here, officially hits the streets, Selbst offering listening another new single in advance, When True Loneliness is Experienced. A couple of observations. So there's definitely a love of classic rock in that opening guitar solo. And, you know, for those that don't know Selbst, you know, they're very much a black metal band. But they do dabble in that side of things very subtly. Maybe more subtly on past releases than I've heard on them do on this song, but with that I'm not bothered by that because I like when bands do that well. The Antichrist Imperium did that really, really well on their last record, and possibly actually on the previous record too. As a matter of fact, not possibly, definitely on the previous record. But yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Again, nice fidelity in the production. I'm very lucky to have these Focal cans, and they do make just about everything sound good. But yeah, I'm digging it so far. I've jumped ahead to 4.5 minutes because I want to hear what things sound like when the song picks up. Let's get back to it. How in the fuck are we going to do a top 30 of 2024 this year? I honestly have no idea. We're in March, and the sheer volume of fucking incredible music that's already been released is mind-blowing. I was updating my... I keep a running playlist of stuff that's at least piqued my attention. I checked this morning, there's about, I'd say maybe 450 to 500 songs on there. So normally, like in a good year, there's been by the end of the year about 1,100, 1,200 songs. That was 2022, 2023. This year, like I said, we're in March and we're at 500, and there's a bunch of stuff we're talking about at the moment that's not even come out yet. I mean, just the 40 seconds we listened to there just sounds superb. Absolutely fucking superb. But no surprise, because everything that Selbst has put out has been great. But it certainly sounds to me like they have outdone themselves top notch. So, okay, let us progress on to some more news. Nocturnus are putting out a new studio album. The last Nocturnus AD record did not really grab my attention. Probably not like I expected that it would, because I'm a big fan of the early Nocturnus stuff. I think Thresholds in particular, which I think came out back in 1990 or 1992. I absolutely love it. Yeah, the last one, it just for whatever reason, just didn't land with me. But it says here, 5 years after the release of their last studio album, Paradox, the Florida-based tech death metal act Nocturnus AD now announced the successor, entitled Unicursal. Sorry, that's a mouthful to say. It comes out on May the 17th via Profound Law Records. The 10-piece outing was produced, engineered, and mastered by Jared Pritchard at New Constellation Audio and features front and back cover artwork by Uwe Jarling with design by Khmer Noir. Let's hear what it sounds like. I'm going to skip ahead by just a tad, because hopefully they've not decided to release an ambient track as their first single. We jump ahead to 1 minute 30 seconds into the song. Hopefully things have picked up by now. I like it. That riff that we kind of, I don't know what the fuck's going on with me tripping over my words again today like a fucking simpleton. But anyway, that riff that we dove into when I skipped ahead, fucking love that. With the dual vocals, it really had the same feel to me as some of the finest moments on Thresholds, which I can now confirm for those of you guys that are obsessive about this sort of thing. It did come out in 1992, released on Earache Records, and featuring the absolutely magnificent song Arctic Crypt. If you haven't heard that track yet, then do yourself a favor and listen to it. It's kind of like got a bit of a Morbid Angel sort of vibe, but with a lot of keyboards and, you know, some progressive elements too. This sounds to me like it's gone down the same track, and that is not a bad thing at all. So it may even motivate me to go back and listen to Paradox again, because, like I said, I don't know why it never landed with me. I know of a few folks that really enjoyed it, but for whatever reason at the time, it maybe just wasn't something that was going to chime with my tastes. But this sounds very, very promising indeed. Okay, we'll do one or two more, and then we will head over to the Democrats Guide to Rock Music. There's an article there about a new Cradle of Filth record, which I can probably predict is going to sound like a load of fucking dog turd. And then there's Belor, who have released a new single. It says here, Battle for Threlas, or Threlas, or whatever the fuck it's called. A brand new track from Belor's oncoming long player, Eastern Tales, has premiered online in the form of an official music video. The new outing drops on April the 5th on Northern Silence Productions. Belor are being played specifically because the song appears to have been hosted by the excellent black metal promotion channel. The woman's anguished look on the thumbnail suggests this may be one that I'm not going to like so much, but we'll find out. Right, another lengthy intro. I'm going to jump ahead to the middle of the song. The music video is dripping with cheese, much like that thumbnail, but let's keep our fingers crossed for the best. Now, the music video has the acting of the acting quality of an 80s porn movie. The song itself, it's not rubbish, but it's just not it's not doing anything for me. After some of the things we've heard on the news rant today, it's not. It sounds like it should have come out about 10 years ago, and it would have left an impression then, but not in 2024. The bar is so high now that if you release something like this, it'll have its audience, but it'll be an audience of people that play Magic the Gathering obsessively. One quick thing before I jump over to Blabbermouth. It says their Testament as a new album in pre-production phase. Already, the groveling emails have gone out to the folks at Nuclear Blast to let me interview Chuck Billy when the opportunity presents itself. So fingers crossed that I can make that happen. That is an absolute wish list guest of mine. I would love nothing more than to have him on the show, and I fucking love Testament. I mean, I'm unabashed in how much I enjoy them. All right, over on Blabbermouth, we learn that Charlie Benante is apparently witnessing Pantera fans weeping openly because, or during the band's sets, because some of them are crying because it's part of their youth. It does remind me, Far Beyond Driven celebrated its 30th birthday, which blows my mind. This past, this past week, I think. And it did take me back to the days when I heard Far Beyond Driven for the first time. I remember one of the rare times when I took the bus to the center of town, bought the CD with my pocket money, from a place called Rebel Music, and I immediately went home and I drawled that fucking thing. No pun intended, if you know what the album cover looks like, which, again, frankly, if you're listening to this and you don't, something's wrong with you. But I drawled that fucking CD for months on end, and it was a companion to, you know, some of the seminal moments of any teenager's life. The girlfriend that ditches you and you sit listening to Shedding Skin, thinking to yourself, that Phil Anselmo, he knows what I'm going through. And, you know, you have a run-in with the bullies at school, you go straight home, and it's becoming Strength Beyond Strength, Slaughtered. Probably my best memory of Far Beyond Driven is convincing school DJs that, like, in South Africa, school dances are were like a big thing when I was banging. And it would be mostly rubbish music that gets played there. It would be like in a gym hall, and everybody's there dancing and being jovial and happy. That didn't sit well with me when I was young. So, on one particular school dance, we dragged one of those pavilions, like one of those movable pavilion, like seating arrangements. I don't know what I would call it, like a pavilion stand. Me and my friends dragged it into the gym hall, and we then we dragged it kind of to the back of the gym hall, so that it was quite near the dance floor. We convinced the DJ to play Slaughtered, and we told him that it was something completely different, like a fucking dance techno song. He played Slaughtered, and we just laid waste to that place, moshing. We got onto the pavilion, stage dove into our mates, and we kind of made it so that if you weren't a part of the mosh pit, we made you part of the mosh pit. And subsequently, I was banned from ever attending another school dance, and they were certainly never going to listen to me when it came to music recommendations ever again. But that's probably one of my favorite memories about Far Beyond Driven. It's not a perfect Pantera album. I think it's not as perfect, I should say, as A Vulgar Display of Power. It does feature Good Friends and A Bottle of Pills, which is a self-indulgent, pointless load of shit that, in my view, breaks the momentum of the record a little bit. But it does have, in addition to all of those songs that I mentioned, a couple of deep cuts that are just fantastic, including 25 Years, which I love. I love Throes of Rejection. I love Use My Third Arm. It's a fucking incredible record, and it still sounds good to this day. And as a side note, we may hit it further down the list, but I noticed that old Rex Brown has been talking recently about not minding not minding writing new Pantera music. I did say a couple of weeks ago, my prediction is in 2025, they will announce a new album featuring Phil Anselmo, Rex Brown, Charlie Benante, and Zakk Wylde, and I think they're not going to call it Pantera, they're going to call it Cowboys from Hell, and they're going to do it in the Pantera font, and it's going to be basically Black Label Society riffs with Phil singing. And I don't think that's going to sound bad. They'll probably perform it when they go out as Pantera, but I think in an ideal world, that's kind of the way that they should do it if they are going to do it, right? Don't release it as Pantera, but if you are going to do something, then release it as Cowboys from Hell and release it, with a mindset of it being a tribute. We'll see what happens. Okay, next up, we've got KK Downing saying that it's a mystery why Tim Ripper Owens era Judas Priest albums are not available on streaming services. In a new interview with Rob Rush of Long Island's 94.3 The Shark radio station, former Judas Priest and current KK's Priest guitarist KK Downing was asked why the two albums that singer Tim Ripper Owens recorded with Judas Priest, 1997's Jugulator and 2001's Demolition, are not available on the major streaming services. Downing replied, "It's a bit of a mystery. Obviously, I no longer have control over those records, but I don't think that it's a label thing because labels always like to sell records, don't they? And obviously, myself and Ripper, we're still very proud of everything that we've done as part of our history and legacy, and we'd very much like to see the records out there in the stores once more. Hopefully, we'll see that come to fruition, but the good news is that this band's KK's Priest will be out there playing those songs throughout the year, so everyone is welcome to come down and experience those magical times that we now refer to as the Ripper era." I've talked a lot of trash about old KK over the course of many a news rant. But one thing that I will say is I do kind of agree with him. I didn't like Demolition. I thought it was terrible. But I do have a bit of love in my heart for Jugulator, I've got to say. And I'm gonna demonstrate why that is right now. Metal Trenches recently did a tiering of or a ranking, stack ranking of the Judas Priest albums. He hates the records. But I have to say, I have a bit of love for Jugulator. More love, I would argue, than I've had for, what's the fucking thing called? Nostradamus. I thought that was complete utter shit. And I thought Angel of Retribution had a couple of decent songs on, Judas is Rising being one of them. But in the main, it's actually not a very good album. But I'm going to play you guys a track that Ripper did called Burn in Hell. That's taken off Jugulator, and I fucking love the song. So you guys tell me in the comments what you think. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. But I think if they still wheeled this out live with Rob singing, it would sound fantastic.
I'm still laughing. There's not much else I can do, but one thing's certain. I'm coming back for you. Have you got a gun? Do you remember well? Who'd you use it on? You're going to burn in hell.
I think that riff is fucking nasty. I really enjoy it. It's not Painkiller. Nothing ever will be, because Painkiller is the greatest thing that Judas Priest ever did or ever will do. But I don't think that the album deserves nearly as much hate as it gets. Static X shares the first trailer for their official documentary Evil Disco, The Rise, Fall, and Regeneration of Static X. It is well known that I think Wisconsin Death Trip is a masterpiece, that being the Static X debut album. Mind-blowing to me that it's 25 years old, because I remember very clearly getting it. And interestingly, you don't kind of tally up how much time is passing. I will say that to this day, probably not a week goes by that I don't listen to at least one song from the album, if not listen to the album back or end to end. I think it is absolutely fucking sensational. There's not really anything else that the band has ever done that I like. There's a couple of songs here and there that I think is alright, but I think Wisconsin Death Trip is fucking brilliant. And it's interesting to me how many dyed-in-the-wool black metal dudes I've seen on Twitter and on Instagram saying the exact same thing. Guys that, their thumbnail is some corpse-painted dude with fucking spikes with a logo that no one's ever been able to decipher, and then like, yeah, man, I love Wisconsin Death Trip, still listen to it every single day. So that to me was quite a surprise. But let's have a quick gander at this trailer, because I think that could be a pretty interesting documentary.
We just started calling it Evil Disco.
For 25 years, their music has captivated millions of fans around the world. Now prepare for a journey through the rise, fall, and regeneration of
Static X.
To me, Wisconsin Death Trip is that era's The Wall.
1 million people actually went out to the store and bought my CD.
That's who Wayne Static was at that time.
Everything is just like a dream.
They had that vibe. People just wanted to rage and party.
They were so good, it blew me fucking away.
They almost became like the Korn or the Limp Bizkit.
We expected none of it.
There was like a turning point.
Feeding them pills, alcohol, threesomes, wild sex orgy parties.
These two were living in this Bonnie and Clyde suicide, drug craze, cinematic romance.
Me and Wayne had a suicide pact.
She's like, Wayne's dead.
This was what she wanted to do.
Honoring the band, honoring the sound.
I felt that it was a tremendous way to celebrate the work.
The band has so much great music and tons of fans all over the world.
Watching these guys come back has been incredible.
Yeah, I'm down with seeing that. Like I said, not really a fan of anything that they did after Wisconsin Death Trip, but you can't go wrong with that album. I think it's fucking fantastic. And I mean, that comes from somebody who, the vast majority of what I listen to, you guys know, is, black metal or death metal. I'm, down for the cause, absolutely. But if you can't listen to Trance's The Motion and not tell me that is fucking kick-ass. All right, speaking of kick-ass, I'm going to wrap up with something over on wearethepit.com. Of course, last week I had the great Sheriff Mike Scandado on the podcast doing the news rant with me. And he recently, we kind of touched on some hardcore. He sent me something recently that I said I needed to check out, and I've been saving it for the news rant. It is the new single by Kublai Khan of out of Texas. Now, where the fuck is the goddamn article? Let me find it, and I'll be right back. Got it. It says here, watch Kublai Khan's brand new single, The Crushing Low Tech. So, very excited to hear what this sounds like. I think that Sheriff Mike Scandado has got me pegged when it comes to what I like as far as hardcore is concerned. So let's listen.
Build myself in the dirt. Sacred right, sacred curse. Whoever suspected dust. Promise go the anti-rusted return. For your life a sacrifice. Teach your child no rusted day. To be a man with nowhere to stand. All tech with your dick left in your hand. You built the world, we can't share it and share it. I'm sorry that we're not the ones to inherit. Old souls, not royalty. I want nothing, solitude will prove. I will lose. Force to love, force to shoot.
Fucking brilliant. I mean, sometimes you want music with sophistication, you want music with subtlety, and, you want music where they're doing some interesting shit. We listened to quite a few bands, a few examples like that today. But sometimes you just want something that is simplistic, caveman-esque, and just makes you want to fuck something or someone up. That's going to be a mainstay in the old Jackson Gym, or on the old Jackson Gym playlist. Top notch, without a doubt. Tell you what it does, though. It reminds me that we are overdue for a full-length Botch album. The Botch single that I have raved about, we're going to listen to again as we wrap up the news rant for this week, because it is a fucking masterpiece. Fucking fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And if anybody listening to this knows the guys in Botch, number one, tell them to come on into the Necrosphere. Number two, tell them where is the fucking full-length album that should be following up this brilliant track. Add Kublai Khan and Botch to your gym playlist, my friends, and that is the news rant wrapped up for this week. Another episode of Into the Necrosphere comes to an end, my friends. I've got some steaks getting ready for grilling in the kitchen. I've got a whole bunch of other shit I need to do before Norway. So I am going to bid you all a fond farewell. It seems to me like almost every other episode of Into the Necrosphere, I find a way to to remind everybody how big of a fan I am of Greg McIntosh of Paradise Lost. But I'm not simply a fan of his work in Paradise Lost. I also love what he does in everything else he's been involved in, including Host, Strigoi, and of course Vallenfyre. I'm going to play us, in my view, the signature track by Vallenfyre right now. This is a song called Splinters. Whatever it is that you are doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.